Welcome to the Darkstream. Thanks for tuning in. This is an experimental Darkstream because it seems that Google has finally decided it's okay for the Darkstream to utilize super chats. So, I know a number of you have been asking me when it was going to have it, and so it is now on. And thanks to Jordan Peterson's hot cousin and Live Free or Die Bear, we can confirm that it actually works. Is Vox going through the bannings too? I've always, banned various people. I think a lot of you have seen me do it. I'm maybe a little bit less trigger happy or a little less, I don't take any joy in it, but I certainly don't hesitate to shut down people who are being difficult. So, anyhow, the topic tonight is Owen Benjamin, the Big Bear, and I am observing that Owen Benjamin did nothing wrong. Now, I'm not saying that anybody is accusing him of invading Poland or setting up concentration camps for short people. I know we all suspect that he's probably tempted to do it. I know that he's probably plotting to do it. But the reason that I'm addressing this is not because Owen needs any defending. He's a big boy. He's a very big boy. He's perfectly capable of defending himself. I'm reliably informed that he is almost 6'8". And a couple of you are asking, what is the thing that people are saying that Owen did wrong? And what people are saying is that they are absolutely concerned and upset at the fact that Owen is exploring different ideas, new ideas, controversial ideas that violate common assumptions and that violate the narrative. Let me read you one email that I received recently that'll explain why I'm choosing this topic tonight. And we're going to go on, we're not going to talk about Owen the whole time, but we're going to go on to a related subject. And so here's what the emailer said. Owen is making 4-hour streams 5 days a week about not going to the moon, how inertia isn't real, and now he's using flat earth talking points, claiming globe earthers need to convince him. I know you consider him a friend, but the guy is unraveling like a cheap Walmart sweater. This dude really, really needs your help. I have faith that you can drag him back into the sane world since he respects and looks up to you. That would seem improbable. I'm 5'9". He seems like a good guy with a sweet family, and he no longer seems creative or quirky, but rather more like a schizophrenic unspooling. The number of people who genuinely like him but are put off by him seems to grow by the day. Now, first of all, Owen doesn't need my help. Owen is not unraveling. I don't know how the emailer knows about cheap Walmart sweaters, but the thing is that I have been defending conspiracy theory, and I have been observing that the conspiracy theory of history is the most rational and most evidentially sound theory of history that is out there. Also, I want to say, I want to say thanks to Thomas for the super chat. He didn't ask a question though, so please be sure to ask a question, or at least let me know that you don't have one. When you do that, you'll have to forgive me if I'm a little bit awkward with this super chat business. I don't really know how it's done. Ralph says, wow, thanks, Ralph. Thanks for my favorite TV show. With your resume, if you were a lefty, you would be a celebrated intellectual, a renaissance man, and a regular bon vivant. Keep on doing what you're doing, from your better than midwit 127 IQ fan. Thanks. I didn't know that that super chats came with compliments too. Bolt says, I thought you were against super chats. No, I'm not against them. It's actually, I've begun to understand why they're so useful, because so many people complain about how I'm ignoring them, or I'm intentionally avoiding their questions and stuff, when the reality is that these questions just blow past. Somebody said that they had posted the same question 5 times. They emailed it to me, said, hey, I've posted this 5 times in the chats. I'd never seen it. I said, look, I'm not avoiding you. I've just never seen it. So anyhow, to get back to this this presumably concern trolling emailer, I don't know that he was actually concern trolling genuinely. He did claim to be a longtime reader of mine, so I don't know that he was not genuine. But what I think is, well, I mean, I've dealt with this more than 11 years ago. It's Vox's first law. And Vox's first law states that any sufficiently advanced intelligence is indistinguishable from insanity. Now, Owen has a much higher IQ than normal. And it's very, very common for high IQ individuals to entertain abstract hypotheses and to entertain alternative ideas simply because they're interesting. And simply because it allows you to imagine other possibilities, because sometimes when you do that, it allows you to understand things in a new and different way. In fact, Aristotle even talks about this specifically in the Rhetoric. He talks about how when we attempt to categorize and synthesize new ideas, that we're able to achieve a different and deeper understanding at times. And so when you ask yourself, why do I believe that we landed on the moon? And you realize that the only reason you landed on the moon is because your school teacher told you that, and then you suddenly realize all the things that your school teacher told you are false. That's when you suddenly back up and go, wait a minute, I don't know that that's actually true. It doesn't matter how smart you are if you don't question your assumptions, then you will cling to bad and false assumptions. Thanks, TK Mao. He says, questioning any historical event is valid, in my opinion. That's absolutely true, because especially if you subscribe to the idea that science is a method to achieve and understand truth, which, by the way, it isn't, but a lot of people believe that it is. If you believe that science is a valid way to discern truth, then you have to understand that all of history is a black book to you. You cannot utilize the method of science to demonstrate any historical event. A historical event is always dependent upon documentary evidence. It's always dependent upon testimonial evidence that has been recorded. And so, let's see, somebody asked about the Jordanetics audiobook. It's not on Audible. You can get it directly from Castalia at the archavencomics.com store. The link is below the video. Now, what Owen's doing is he is dealing with the fact that some of the things that he assumed were true are not actually true. And so he is looking at various other assumptions, and he is realizing that his basis for believing in them is not necessarily any better. Let me give you an example. When I was 30 years old, no, I was 28 years old, my wife and I went to my parents' house down in Naples. And it was the first time in my entire life that I ever questioned the assumption that the crust is the healthiest part of the bread. My wife was going to cut the crusts off, and I said rather jokingly, just because, I don't know, you shouldn't do that. The crust is the best part. She said, "What do you mean the best part?" I said, "Well, it's the healthiest part." She said, "No, it's not." I said, "Well, yeah, it is." She said, "Honey, think about how bread is made." And for the first time in my entire life, I stopped and actually thought about the process of making bread. And I realized that all the ingredients are all kneaded together in the dough. It's all the same. So it doesn't matter if you cut the crust off or not. The bread is the bread. Eat the crust or don't eat the crust as you like. But the interesting thing, the most important thing, is that I had never, ever stopped to think about it. And no matter how high your intelligence is, if you don't use it, it's irrelevant. And so, once you realize that you are not thinking about something, because Owen, like me, like a lot of us, never ever stopped to think about whether we had landed on the moon or not. He just assumed we had. It's the same thing with everything from gravity to, I think there's more solid evidence that the Earth is a sphere than the fundamental concept of gravity. Oh, relax. Ellerin says, "I just noticed the super chat thing. Now Vox will only read super chats." That's not true. I will guarantee to answer all the super chats, but I'll answer other questions too. I mean, if you don't realize now that I am not fundamentally money or fame motivated, you don't know me very well. Yes, obviously we need plenty of money and resources to do the kind of things that we do, that people want us to do. But in terms of it being a personal motivator, it isn't. So speaking of super chats, I do have two to address here. Truck My Ad says, "Doctors say things happen that science can't explain." They do. It happens all the time. I mean, we're dealing with that right now with our dog. The veterinarians are astonished at the situation that we found ourselves. They said that this is something that none of them has ever seen before. And, I personally find myself wondering if there wasn't perhaps some sort of spiritual element to it. I haven't said that to the vets because, I don't want to have that conversation. But the thing is that they can't understand it, but they can operate within the framework of their understanding. And that's what they do. And, I'm very happy to be able to say that tonight, for the first time in months, I was having dinner. Apparently, I'm considered the sucker, the easy mark of the family. But for the first time in months, he came up and did one of these during dinner. That's Ridgeback for, hey, can I have some of that? And normally my wife is always, don't give him any. If you wouldn't give him food at the table, he wouldn't do that. And I looked over at her, and she was so happy. I thought she was about to cry. Because he's gained so far. If I recall correctly, he's actually gained 4.5 kilos from his low point, and he's still really skinny. And so, the doctors view and observe things all the time that they can't understand. If it was science, if it was engineering, then they could quantify it, they could nail it down, and they do use it. It's a valuable tool. I'm a huge fan of genuine science. I'm a huge fan of the scientific method. But science can't explain everything. Our understanding is limited. It almost certainly always will be. Thanks, DJ Link. He says, I'm glad Super Chat is enabled now solely because I want to contribute to someone I'm finding value in. Well, I appreciate that, especially because we all spend way too much time and money supporting stuff that is out to destroy us, that opposes everything we believe, everything we stand for, our nations, our faiths. And it's very important to look for those that you actually share your views with or get something valuable from. That's what the gig economy is all about. And so I very much appreciate those of you who go out of your way to support the stuff that we're doing, whether it's with the Darkstream and Voxiversity, whether it's with Castalia, whether it's with Arkhaven. A lot of these things, I do because people ask me to do them. I've gotten to the point now where I actually kind of enjoy these video talks. I'm never going to be a natural at it, but I've gotten to the point where I don't, dread the idea of turning the camera on. And so, it's a two-way street. Loyalty works best when it flows both ways. Cutting off the crust feels wasteful. Exactly. Yeah, Horse Mumbler, I tend to agree, sort of. I tried to make the case that the outside of the bread does go through a different chemical process than the middle, but when it comes down to it, the difference is so insubstantial that I don't think that's a case that we can reasonably make. Sasquatch Bear of the Dread Ilk, we got a double fan there, says, Super Chat, did trust and safety forget to do their job? Clearly someone is getting fired tomorrow. Actually, I have a theory about this. And my theory is based on two things. I mean, number one, I do have a lot of contacts within Google. And it's also very public knowledge. It was, on Breitbart and everything, that I am personally banned from the Mountain View campus. And so my suspicion is that about the last thing that Google wants to do is give me any excuse to file a lawsuit that would allow me to do discovery on all of their internal communications about me. And I think that would probably be worth a lot more than monetizing my channel. And so it's just a theory. It could also be that they're just playing it straight, and I haven't done anything that merits that kind of treatment. So who knows, But um, a number of people asked me to do it, to turn the super chats on, and so I did. And thanks very much for participating in it. And it is useful, actually. I have to admit, I now that I didn't really understand it when I had 100 people watching. But now that there's 1,000 people concurrent, and all of these comments are coming through so rapidly, sometimes as many as 12 a second according to the analytics, I just can't keep up to it. Right now we've got 1,000 concurrent viewers at the moment. Slammerai Jamdown says, here is tribute to become one of the bread ilk. That's a bad pun. Anaf Habib says, most of the concerned trolls going after Owen don't know how to analyze testimony. A lot of them worship nonsense like peer review, for example, which is just a flawed testimony transmission method. Exactly. Thanks, Anaf. And I want to point out that peer review is just editing. It's literally the same process as editing. You're just glancing over it, making sure that there's nothing too obviously stupid as far as you can tell. That's all peer review is. What is your opinion on false flags? Anthony wants to know. They exist, and don't fall for them. I can't tell you, this is definitely a false flag and this is definitely not, because I don't have the necessary information. But I do know from my studies of history that false flags are very common. They're often used by countries in order to stir up the population, in order to win support for otherwise unpopular policies, and to put the blame for their own actions on other nations. Alexander from Greece says, I love your work, with respect from Greece. Well, thank you. I'm a big fan of Greece. I spent my entire junior year in calculus class in high school drawing a stick figure animation battle, sequential battle of the Trojan War. You should have seen my teacher's face when I did okay on the final test, not great. And he said, well, I was a little surprised you didn't do better. And I said, yeah, I probably should have taken some notes or something. And he said, what do you mean you didn't take any notes? I saw you taking notes every day. I said, yeah, about that. Showed him my Trojan War thing. He was impressed with my knowledge of the Iliad. Didn't help my calculus grade any, but, c'est la vie. Yeah, praying for sick puppies is one of the terrible rituals of Vox's followers. No, one of the things I really like about the community that we have here is the way that people pray for each other, the way that people support each other. People who've never met, will never meet, don't know each other's names, but wish each other well. That's one of the wonderful things about the internet. Actually, I want to add something else about that trust and safety thing. What's interesting is that the woman who is the head of trust and safety at Indiegogo is now at trust and safety at Google. And so, that's another connection that could prove interesting over time, especially as our case, our arbitration case against them proceeds. C Speaks brings up our old friend Peter Boghossian. Um, if you haven't seen it on my blog, I actually addressed his little book. I addressed it uh, in detail. Literally every chapter, every argument he raised, I countered it on the blog. But he did do so. So I don't think much of him. I don't think much of his reasoning, and I don't think much of his intellectual capabilities. But I will say that what he did, taking down the peer review community, was fantastic, and I totally support him in that. That's what C Speaks is referring to. Thank you, C Speaks. He says Peter Boghossian's recent soiree, I think sortie would be better, but anyhow, in the peer review community should serve as an example to people who would rather not question their long held assumptions about institutions and scientific truths. Everyone has an agenda. Well, that's precisely correct. And that's why I think it's very important to understand the distinction between scientody, which is the scientific method, scientage, which is the scientific knowledge base, and scientistry, which is the profession of science. And the fundamental limitation on science is not the method. It is the profession, because the profession is just as corruptible as any other human profession, and these days, arguably more so. Let's see here. So anyhow, I think that it is absolutely absurd to imagine or propose that Owen has any issue at all. And I think it's great that he is questioning narratives and he's questioning assumptions, and that he is engaging in this intellectual exploration in such a public and entertaining way. Because those of you who are paying attention to it and who are following it are going to learn all kinds of things about physics and about science that you might otherwise never learn. And so there's absolutely no reason whatsoever to do anything but support what Owen is doing in his exploration of seemingly crazy concepts like nobody landing on the moon, like the flat earth, or anything else. Statics asks, what do you think of Ben Shapiro going after Steve King for suspicions of white nationalism and threatening to support his opponents? I think that Ben Shapiro is a neo-Palestinian firster who is a total fake American, who is a total fake conservative, who is a total fake Republican. I think if you don't understand that Ben Shapiro is a liberal imperialist, he's a neo-Palestinian liberal imperialist, he is a moral and physical coward, and he is being pumped up and inflated well beyond his cognitive capabilities or his ability to communicate justifies. The idea that he is going to successfully replace Michael Savage is ludicrous. I'm not a huge fan of Michael Savage, but he is good at his job. Ben Shapiro is not good at Michael Savage's job, and we're going to see he can no better replace Michael Savage than I could replace Rush Limbaugh. So anyhow, I think what we're seeing with Shapiro is we're seeing the same thing that we saw with Bill Kristol going after Donald Trump. All of these guys, all of these neocons, all of these liberal imperialist world revolutionaries are attempting to prevent Americans, and especially young white American men, from gravitating towards Christianity and nationalism. They're terrified of it. Let's see here. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Ben is not a black belt in debate. Ben only debates. I mean, he's the equivalent of the guy who's got like a purple belt, and he goes into a foreign dojo and then goes and beats up on all the white and gold belts. You know. See, you guys need to stop worrying about who um, what people believe. You know, some people just believe differently than you. They have different standards of evidence. And that leads us to our next subject here, which I want to address. Um, let's see. Truck My Ad says, I pray for the sister of Jackie Henderson. Amen. Heal up. Good. Let's hope she does. DJ Link says, do not feel bad. I'm happy to give you my money. We need people like you. Well, I'd like to think so. Oh, and sorry. Jackie says, this is the other one was in reference to Jackie. Jackie Henderson says, love your work, Vox. I sent an email regarding prayer for my sister that I would really appreciate over the next week. Happy to do it. Always happy to pray for any brother or sister in Christ. Jesus Christ, just to be specific. Vox, did the VFM or ilk have a Warcraft 3 team? I think Warcraft 3 is about to expand into a sizable culture war front, both west versus east and right versus left. It's a battlefield worth contending, in my opinion. That's a good idea. I will throw that out there on the blog, and we'll see if anybody's up for that. How much of William Cooper's Behold a Pale Horse was accurate? I don't know. I've never actually read the whole thing. Dan Rain wants to know, what IQ range would you say is required in order to entertain the abstract ideas just because they're interesting? In my opinion, you usually need people in the 130 plus range. Usually. But the way they go about it, this gets into that. If you're interested in this concept, look up VH IQ versus UH IQ, very high IQ versus ultra high IQ. Ultra high IQ is much more abstract oriented. Oh, this is cool. You can actually click on things and it'll show you the question. New to this stuff, remember. Ultra high IQs are much more likely to indulge in the holistic thinking, in pattern recognition. Remember, that's something Owen talks about a lot. He talks about his pattern recognition. I'm also a strong pattern recognition guy. And it's something that a lot of people who don't have similar levels of cognitive capability and who don't have similar pattern recognition skills find difficult to believe. They think that because they can't see it, it doesn't exist. But that's not true. My spatial relations are horrible. I can't see how certain things fit together that my best friend can just look at and go, done. So just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Daniel says, Ontario is the Minnesota of Canada now. Okay, this is strange how it doesn't want to go. Ontario is the Canada of Minnesota now. We now have an Ontario Islamic political party participating in the next election. Do you know that feel? Not really, except, well, actually a little bit I do. I was really disturbed when I went back and saw how much the Dinkytown area had been invaded by Somalis. It isn't and wasn't the place that it used to be anymore. The place that I knew, the place that I know no longer exists. And that's very painful to see. And I think that that's going to be a source of a lot of the problems that are coming in the very near future, both in the United States, in Australia, and in Europe. Anthony Dunn says, halfway through The Last Closet audiobook. Harrowing. I have no idea how Moira got through the recording and writing, let alone living it. Remarkable woman. Good on you, Vox, for taking that project on. Well, thank you. It was very difficult. And, there were there were times when Moira couldn't even get through a conversation with me about certain passages that I was editing. And I needed to know exactly what the facts were that she was referring to, because sometimes she didn't want to address it directly. And I said, and I told her, look, you have to make the direct charges. If you don't, these people are going to come up with interpretations and claim things that are not true. And she was very brave, and she was very courageous, and she was very strong. And if you haven't read or listened to The Last Closet, you really should, because you cannot understand the depth of evil right in front of you. You can't understand how that sort of thing can exist until you either encounter it directly or you read something like that. It's very sobering, but it is also ultimately uplifting. So, Esteban says, Gematria Effect Newson is good research if interested. Gematria Effect. Yeah, I've heard about that. Not particularly familiar with it, but, and this is a good observation from Jerwin Hubin, who says, midwits make me think of the movie Amadeus. Midwits are kind of like that a little bit, but it's more jealousy. What Amadeus is really about, and I can relate to this because I've been in that position, being around the truly gifted. It's painful for those of us who are merely talented. It can be very painful. You know, I envy Tanith Lee. I envy Bruce Bethke. I envy Umberto Eco, people who write beautifully in a way that I can't. Let's see. Thank you for the awesome streams. You're welcome. This is Will. Where do I buy the paperback version for Throne of Bones? The best place to do it is at the Castelia Direct Store. The link, it says Castelia Print Editions right under the video, and it's there. The audiobook is coming probably in about 2 months or so. Alex Bear, having recently given my life to Jesus Christ, good for you. I'm looking for more comprehensive information to further expand my knowledge of Christianity. What books would you recommend other than the Bible? Thanks. Love the Darkstream. Always start with Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis. It's really good. And from there, you can go on to reading some of the church fathers if you're interested in the history. I would stay away from most modern theologians because most of them seem to have an agenda of one type or another. Don't get too caught up in that. Wow, thanks, Cognitive Crusade. He says, thanks, Vox, for all the free content and for helping another Gamma hoping to be a Delta see that the ineffectual dork web is more incestuous than Dr. Prophet Peterson and his grandmother. I say that I hate gammas, and I do. But I don't hate them personally. I hate what they do. And mostly I hate what I know they're going to make me experience and what they're going to make me do. So please, if you're a gamma, please don't think, oh, Vox just hates me. I don't. I want you to get better. I want you to be happier. I want you to be more fulfilled. And I know you're not going to be able to do it if you persist in those same self-defeating patterns of behavior. As long as you lie to yourself, as long as you insist that you're really the winner when you got your ass kicked, you're doomed to repeat your failures. But if you can find the strength, or if you can find the courage to admit the truth to yourself and start learning from your failures, then you've got a much brighter future ahead of you. We'll talk more about this in a direct stream. But let me get. I will get back to the super chats and other questions. But I want to talk about this since we're talking about evidence. A lot of people said that there's this saying that people like, and it says, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And I mean, a lot of you have heard that. And a lot of you take it seriously. But just like the moon landing, just like the flat earth, just like all these other things, it requires you to not think about it. Okay? So, first of all, David Hume never said it. The person who actually said it more or less is a French mathematician named Pierre-Simon Laplace. He said, the more extraordinary a fact is, the more it needs to be supported by strong evidence. For those who attest to it being able to either deceive or have been deceived, these two causes are all the more probable that the reality of the fact is less so in itself. So what he's trying to do there is he's trying to destroy testimony. He's trying to destroy eyewitness evidence. But remember, he's a mathematician. So he's talking about mathematical proof, which of course science can very, very seldom deliver. And so when we say that extraordinary claim, so here, let me back up. Anyone who repeats this phrase, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, is demonstrating one of two things. The first and the most common one is that they haven't actually thought about it. The second one is that they're not too smart. Because either the evidence is sufficient to establish a fact or it isn't. You don't actually need any more evidence for a claim that you find extraordinary than one that you don't. The same amount of evidence, the same amount of proof is required. So, because the nature of claiming ordinary versus extraordinary is based on what? It's just based on your evidence. I mean, if aliens came down tomorrow and they visited only me, and it was an absolute 100% fact, and I recorded it, and I told you about it, science would not be able to prove it. You could come up with, all the stuff they're saying about, well, you could be deceived, or you could be confused, or you could be lying. All of those things are true of the people who are analyzing it. I mean, you look at the discussion of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I told people things that are absolutely true, things that there are plenty of eyewitnesses of, and yet people denied it. They claimed it was false. There's nothing extraordinary about my claims. They just didn't want to believe it. And so this whole extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence is just basically a way of saying, if I don't want to believe it, I'm not going to believe it unless and until you remove the possibility, every single possibility of anything else, and I can't move the goalposts anymore. Unless and until you pin me down so that I can't come up with an alternative explanation and I can't reasonably deny it anymore, I'm going to deny it. That's all they're telling you. Because either the evidence is sufficient to prove something is true or it isn't. It doesn't need to be extraordinary evidence. It doesn't need to be strong evidence. What Laplace is really talking about there is he's just talking about testimony. He's saying if somebody tells you something that is pedestrian, if they're telling you an everyday commonplace, you can probably believe them. But if they're telling you something that sounds totally impossible, then maybe you want some more evidence for it. Which is a perfectly reasonable thing to say. It's just a really terrible argument for atheism or denying the existence of God. So let me point this out. I wrote this before. Actually, Charlemagne makes a point. Followers of the religion of science frequently misuse informal fallacies as if they are absolutely true, like the extraordinary claims idea. Well, that's true, and that's because most people who are really interested in science or who are professional scientists are really bad at philosophy, and they're really bad at logic. it's kind of ironic that they consider themselves to be rationalists because, I mean, they're not very rational. Justin Hutchings says, I learn lots from both you and Owen. Heroes. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, thank you. But, we are just two guys who are curious. And we're two guys who value the truth. The second element is probably a lot more important than the first one. I mean, I can't say, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I sell books. I sell audiobooks. I hope all of you buy them. But I'm not interested in telling you that you need to. I'm not interested in trying to deceive you. People like Ben Shapiro, people like Jordan Peterson, they are very intentionally seeking to deceive you. And that's the big difference there. Pure Light says, I like your chair, Vox. Is there an interesting history to it? It's my grandfather's. I don't know where he got it. I think he might have got it in Japan, but I don't actually know. So, but I love it. A lot of my fond memories of him are him sitting at his desk in this chair, and he had a sort of a couch, not very comfortable couch, but he always had Smithsonian magazines and Washingtonian magazines, which I enjoyed reading. Baron von Metzgenstein says, you probably do more selling of Aristotle than your own books, or at least as much. That's probably true. Dan asks, why do you live in Italy? If you'd ever been here, you would understand why. I like the Italian culture. I love the Italian language. I like the Italian people. I love the Italian wine. And I love the way that the Italian leadership has become increasingly nationalistic. Camouflage Artist says, you brought a chair from USA to Italy? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I brought most of these books, too. So anyhow, I wanted to add here, this is something I wrote a couple years ago. A proper scientific study of the supernatural, as proposed by the likes of Daniel Dennett, will look no different and provide evidence that is no more extraordinary than the evidence that is provided for any natural claim. Whether one is studying the utility of prayer, vitamin C, or surgery in curing cancer, the means and the evidence produced will be the same. So anyhow, it should be clear to everyone that extraordinary claims require no extra proof of their soundness. The only difference between an extraordinary claim and an ordinary one is that there is usually less tangential knowledge surrounding what is described as an extraordinary one. But that tangential knowledge should not be confused with evidence in itself, especially when it does not even support the specific claim being made. So, the whole extraordinary claims idea is nonsense. It's perfectly reasonable to believe things without conclusive evidence. Most of what we believe is believed without conclusive evidence. Whether we're talking about the moon or whether you're talking about whether your mommy loves you. Scientists would find it very, very difficult to prove that your mommy loves you too. Dave says, woohoo! I'm in the inaugural Super Chat Darkstream. Welcome. Also, something I want to mention is I would highly recommend that you subscribe to both Owen and me and whoever else has moved over on stream.me. This is being simultaneously streamed to stream.me, and it's really good and important to have backups and also to support these alternatives. And so I'm occasionally going to do some stream.me only streams and just to support them. But I would encourage you to, if you subscribe to the Darkstream on YouTube, I would encourage you to also subscribe on stream.me. the more that the more alternatives that there are, and the more that we make use of these things, the more that it's going to convince everyone to just leave things alone. Stream.me, I don't know if it. Yeah, I think it does have super chats, or it has something like that. Let's see here. Based on the chat, I should be in the business of selling Vox chairs. This chair is awesome. I mean, it really is. Oh, no, that's just wrong. Cat Mandingo III says Vox wine is for girls. You could not be more wrong, sir. White wine is for girls. Red wine is for real men and healthy hearts. Vox looks like a Chianti drinker. I'm not. I mean, I don't mind Chianti. I kind of like Chianti, but I'm definitely more Merlot, Tempranillo, and Syrah drinker. And sometimes a few mixtures therein. Jaegertree says selling Aristotle books is just an admission that he was right. The subject matter's importance makes it a requirement. It is, and if I could write unlimited books, one of the books that I would write would be dumbing Aristotle down for the modern reader. It's difficult reading, and it doesn't necessarily have to be these days. That's something that I would like to do at some point in time. Big Shasta says, hey, Vox, I used to listen to you and still do from time to time. Honestly, I was just busy with work, but after all the good things Owen has said about you, I'm back to being a regular listener. Keep it up. Well, welcome back. Glad to hear it. Vox Day is attacking Peterson and Rogan to boost his own stock. No, I'm not. Not that I have a beef with that. After all, the dark web needs destroying. Your heart is in the right place, so I will forgive you for the inaccurate charge. I'm not attacking Peterson and Rogan to boost my own stock. I wasn't even interested in Peterson, And with Rogan, that was just happenstance. I just happened to, Owen had been talking about him, and I didn't even realize that he had gotten involved in martial arts. I was like, oh, really? The guy from News Radio? He's all right. I wonder if he's any good. So I watched it, and I was very impressed with how he's kept himself in really good shape. He's like a year older than me, 2 years older than me, and he's in fantastic condition. But I immediately saw, as many other experienced fighters saw, that this is not a guy who has been involved in actual fighting. There's nothing wrong with that. It's probably good. But, I saw what I saw. I observed what I saw. Okay, granted, the whole Brazilian cuddling thing, that was just because I was, I get irritated when people try to claim that I'm lying and that sort of stuff. I'm not. I wasn't. Slavic Striz says, can tip for good entertainment and ideas. Thanks for good content. I've seen researchers say alien encounters are demons because they act like them. I do think that there is something fundamentally demonic about the alien thing. I don't know why. I don't know what. I have no direct information on any of it, but there does seem to be something, there's some link between that. Something wrong about that. Dante Pelosi says, do you believe in the yellow vests? Yes, I do. I support them. Vox, please read my super chat about Owen and the Bears. I'll be happy to if I can find it. I wish they had a better system for finding these things. Oh, here, I know how I can find it. Let me try it here. Okay. I'm looking for Alex. Okay. Oh, this is a good one, actually. I think this is you. Alexander TG. To all of you who trash Owen and the Bears, please have some humility. I know one thing that I know nothing, Socrates. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why anyone would ever trash. Um, I don't know why anyone would ever trash Owen for being intellectually curious. I mean, isn't having an open mind supposed to be a good thing? When did having an open mind and being curious and going in search of become a bad thing? Oh, here's one I missed too. Drake Tungsten. I gave 2VS as much. At least I know this will be better spent. Well, I mean, let's face it. we all know it's probably going to involve a dog in one way, shape, or form. Um, I'm hoping that he's going to be able to come on the Darkstream soon. So I'll make sure I didn't miss any here. Truck my ad. Glad super. Okay, good. Oh, Illustrin says, have you ever encountered a benevolent spiritual entity? Not that was not human. I certainly haven't run into any angels or anything like that. William Late says, thank you for adding cuddle puddle to my lexicon. Yeah, sorry about that. Whatever you do, just don't Google it. Can you do us all a favor, Vox, and storm the Vatican with your dragon skills and liberate all that locked away history? Oh, I would love to. I would absolutely love to. Is it true that America is the economically strongest country? No, it is not. Are you verified? No. What does Owen claim his IQ is? 147. Can you get Faith Goldie on the Darkstream? Actually, I think I can. I think I figured out how to get video and actually do an interview on it. So I'm looking forward to doing that soon. What about Eric Weinstein? I think the Weinsteins are leftists. I think they're barely to the right of SJWs. I have no idea why anyone pays them any attention whatsoever. Candy says, open mind and searching is far more valuable than blind belief or blindly writing something off. I agree. Even crazy stuff like flat earth. Investigate, even if just to rule it out. I think so. I think you should. I mean, I'm not interested in it. But Kevin Burger King says, his IQ is not 147. Look, I don't know if you realize, but given Owen's age, that he, like me, knows exactly what his IQ is because he had to take an IQ test called the PSAT and the SAT before he went to college. And so that's why, everybody above a certain age tends to know exactly where they stand, whereas everybody under a certain age doesn't because they stopped IQ testing everyone. Let's see. Why is Eric Weinstein even getting publicity and interviews? His brother was the one with the Evergreen issue. Well, because the New York Times is elevating them to become the approved opposition. They don't want people turning to people like Stefan Molyneux and Mike Cernovich and Owen Benjamin. They want you listening to Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and the Weinsteins. That's what approved opposition means. So, Vox, I wonder what your thoughts are on the way people always try to put themselves in groups. Well, people are group animals. I mean, we're pack animals if we're not herd animals. And so it's normal. Everybody wants to belong. I want to belong, and I'm a total loner, but I find it very, very valuable to be a member of my soccer team. I go out of my way to be a valued member of the team. It's important to me. I'm proud to go into town wearing my team jacket. That's normal. That's human. That's what we want to do. And it's right for us to do it. We just need to be careful about who we accept as our leaders. Dr. Sachs says, Vox, since discovering Owen through you, I am convinced there is an awakening of like minds happening. Owen has said several things that could have come out of my own mouth, and that was an eye-opener. Well, in interesting and challenging times, people have to either believe the lie or they have to see through them. And people like Owen are helping people see through things, which is great. Fun Size Bear says, please update the audio feeds on iTunes. I don't know how to do that. I don't know anything about iTunes or Apple or anything. So if there's anybody who wants to help me turn the podcast on again, please go ahead and email me. Jordan Peterson has another hot cousin has another question. Hey, I need to read it over here. The Streamlabs interface does not work terribly well. Hey, Vox, any thoughts on when Christians are allowed to be aggressive? Also, thank you for turning me away from Peterson's occult poison and pointing me back to God-fearing Christianity. You're very welcome. I've had people do the same for me, and that's the only way to thank them is to do the same for someone else. I believe that Christians are allowed to be aggressive in defense of themselves and others, and when dealing with wickedness. I think the whole idea that turn the other cheek means that you can never do anything to defend anyone, including yourself, is totally wrong and a total mis-extrapolation of a concept that is more focused on personal pride, not on self-defense, much less matters of war and so forth. I don't think that answer is quite as full as I would like, but that's off the top of my head. No ACT, but did well on ASVB 1989. Should I be proud of that? They said I could have done any job in the military. Assuming that that's like the military occupational test, that would probably be an IQ test. ACT was not an IQ test. I'd have to look it up though. I don't know what ASVAB 1989 is. But in the time frame, given that the SAT was an IQ test until I think 1995, that probably was an IQ test. And if they said you could do any job in the military, then that means almost certainly that you're above 120. Jester says, Owen and Vox are wizard slayers and are over the target. Expect incoming flak to increase. It's all relative. I mean, you got to keep in mind, back in 2001, I was the target of the Council on American Islamic Relations #1 email priority. So I've never seen anything to compare like that since. Stephanie would like to see me chat with Jay Dyer about theology. We probably will do that sometime. He's a good guy. I like him. I'm currently writing a book on Proverbs. Any tips? Read Proverbs? I don't know. All right. Well, thanks very much. This has been an interesting experience. Oh, wait. There's a... Okay, I just want to make sure I caught all the super chats. Good. All right. Well, thanks very much. Thanks to all of you who proved that the super chats work. That was very generous. And I want to mention that if you're interested in the audiobooks, we've now changed the format. They're now going to be single files. It was requested. They're M4B or M4B? They're MP4 single files, compressed considerably more than the MP3s, but the quality remains extremely high, 4 times higher than Audible. And so if you're interested in our audiobooks, definitely check them out at archavencomics.com. The link is below. And I will look forward to seeing you all at the next Darkstream. And remember, the big bear did nothing wrong.